Hélène Jégado, born on June 7, 1803, in a small rural village called Plouhinec in the Morbihan region of France, to a poor farming family, was one of the most infamous poisoners in French history. She was executed by guillotine in the city of Rennes on February 26, 1852. The French people remember her as the empoisonneuse Breton, meaning the Breton poisoner. She was accused of murdering approximately 36 or more people using arsenic, with these crimes spanning over an 18-year period. However, due to the 10-year statute of limitations in French law at the time, the court only tried her for 5 murders, 5 attempted murders, and 11 thefts. This story is a detailed account of her life from birth to death, filled with poverty, religious fervor, psychological issues, and Breton folklore. Hélène started as a simple domestic servant and became a goddess of death who poisoned people's lives. This narrative is based on French and English sources like Wikipedia, Murderpedia, and Pierre Bouchardon's 1937 book Hélène Jégado, The Breton Poisoner. We will describe her life in a continuous story format, also touching on the social, political, and medical conditions of 19th century Brittany. Brittany, the northwestern region of France, was in that era filled with poverty, cholera epidemics, and deep religious beliefs. The deadly cholera outbreak of 1832 had claimed thousands of lives, helping to conceal poisonous crimes like those of Hélène. Arsenic, easily available as rat poison, was known as the white powder. As a servant, Hélène would mix it into the food she prepared, such as soups, cakes, and drinks, to kill people. Her victims included priests, novice nuns, bourgeois family members, and innocent children. Psychologically, she is believed to have been influenced by the Breton folklore figure Ankou, a skeletal phantom that foretells death and collects souls. Hélène's life was a living embodiment of this Ankou, born from childhood traumas. Hélène was born in 1803, when the wounds of the French Revolution were still fresh and Napoleon's era was beginning. Plouhinec was a tiny village where farming families earned their bread through hard labor. Her father was a simple farmer who worked the land, and her mother handled household chores. But the first major trauma in Hélène's life came at just 7 years old when her mother died. This loss deeply affected her psyche. After her mother's death, Hélène was sent to live with her 2 aunts, who worked as servants in a priest's house in a place called Boubry. This is where her life of servitude began, which became the center of her remaining years. In the Boubry rectory, Hélène learned household tasks: cleaning, cooking, washing clothes, and caring for children. These skills would later become weapons for her crimes. Breton folk tales were part of Hélène's childhood memories, especially the story of Ankou, a bony figure who drives a cart and collects the souls of the dying. At night, these stories frightened her, but this fear gradually became part of her psyche. Psychologists like in Georges Lesaut's 1968 writing attribute it to schizophrenia resulting from childhood trauma. Hélène later confessed that, "I killed people because Ankou tormented me." This statement reflects her mental state. After about 17 years of service in Boubry in the 1820s, Hélène was transferred to a place called Séglien, where she cooked for a priest. Here, an incident occurred. She mixed hemp into the priest's soup, leading to accusations and her dismissal. This was the first sign that something was wrong with her mental state, but her apparent religious devotion deceived people. She continued going to church, praying, and convincing others of her honesty. 19th century France, especially Brittany, was a traditional society where poor girls were forced into servitude. Like Hélène, many women became domestic servants after becoming orphans, and the Catholic Church was the center of their lives. Servants were trusted because they were keepers of household secrets. Hélène's inner turmoil, stemming from the trauma of her mother's death, led her toward a kind of abandoned child syndrome, where she sought power and control. In 1833, after being fired from Séglien, Hélène's real poisonous journey began. She arrived in a place called Guillotine, where she got a job in the house of a priest named François Le Drogo. From June 28th to October 3rd, 1833, 7 people in that house died. The priest himself, his elderly mother and father, and surprisingly, Hélène's own sister, Hélène Jégado. The symptoms of the dying included vomiting, diarrhea, severe pain, and paralysis, which resembled the cholera epidemic of the time. The 1832 cholera had devastated Brittany, so these deaths were considered natural. Hélène expressed fake grief at each death, cared for the dying, and comforted people, which prevented any suspicion. After leaving Guernes, Hélène returned to Beaubry, where 3 people died in her aunt's house, including the aunt herself. Hélène sat by their bedsides providing care, but in reality she poisoned them. Then in Locminé, a woman named Marie-Jeanne Le Boucher and her daughter died. Her son survived because he didn't accept Hélène's help. A widow named Laurie also died after eating soup prepared by Hélène. In May 1835, 4 people died in Madame Toussaint's house. By this time, Hélène's total deaths had reached 17. In a place called Auray, she got a job in a convent but was fired for insults and theft, fortunately without any deaths. Then in places like Auray, Pontivy, Lorient and Port-Louis, she had short jobs where many people fell ill and died. In May 1841, in Plumeur at Château de Souailles, a 3-year-old girl named Marie Breget died. Hélène mixed poison into her porridge. This was her most innocent victim. The child writhed in severe pain, her body stiffened, and her hair fell out, all classic symptoms of arsenic. Hélène considered it a sacrifice to Ankou and kept a lock of the child's hair in her room, which later proved to be one of her psychological habits. Hélène's method was simple but effective. She mixed arsenic into food or drinks, which was easily available. The motivations were psychological. Killing gave her a sense of power and control. She confessed that murdering gave me power. In the 1830s, Brittany was in social turmoil, poverty was widespread, and identifying poison was difficult because autopsies were rare. Doctors often declared deaths natural. After 1841, for about 8 years, there were no suspected deaths by Hélène, but her thefts increased. She was a kleptomaniac and stole small items. In 1849, she moved to the city of Rennes, where she got a job in the house of university professor Théophile Bidard. This is where her second phase of crimes began. In 1842 in Hennebont, a priest's death. In 1843 in Auray, the deaths of the future mayor's in-laws. In 1845 in Lorient, a novice nun's death and theft. In 1847 in Locminé, an attack on a doctor's family. And in 1848 in Pontivy, the death of the mayor's 7-year-old son from poison in a cake. The detail of the Pontivy death was heart-wrenching. The mayor's son ate a cake prepared by Hélène while playing, and he writhed in severe pain all night. He died by morning. In Port-Louis, Hélène worked in a military brothel where she poisoned soldiers and looted their belongings. The estimated total was over 36, with some sources saying up to 80. According to psychological analysis, in Miriam Tsikounas' book Eternal Guilty, she is described as a woman seeking domestic power, born from the helplessness of servitude. In 1849, in the Rabot family in Rennes, 7-year-old Louis-Joseph Albert Rabot died, and attacks were made on his mother Charlotte and grandmother. 2 governesses and a servant were also killed. These deaths were due to arsenic, but by then Hélène's fate was turning. In 1850, in Bidard's house, a servant named Rose Tessier died, and then in 1851, Rosalie Sarrazin. Doctors performed autopsies and found arsenic in the bodies. Hélène said unprompted, "I am innocent," which increased suspicion. She was arrested on July 1, 1851. The investigation linked 23 deaths from 1833 to 1841, but due to the 10-year limit in law, only recent cases were tried. From her room, 80 pieces of victims' hair and clothing were found, indicating her psychological habit. Chemist Faustino Malaguti confirmed arsenic and antimony. Hélène denied, saying, "I don't know about arsenic." The trial began on December 5, 1851, in the Rennes court. The charges were 5 murders, 5 attempts, and 11 thefts. Hélène's behavior was strange, sometimes shouting religious slogans, sometimes getting angry. Her lawyer Magloire d'Orange claimed insanity, saying she is mad, her brain is sick. But on December 6th, the sentence was pronounced death by guillotine. In historical context, Napoleon III's 1851 coup overshadowed the trial. Hélène was called the new form of the 17th century poisoner Brinvilliers. On February 26, 1852, her head was chopped off in Rennes' Champ de Mars in front of thousands. In prison, she confessed to Abbé Tiercelin that "I killed for the sake of killing." Hélène's legacy is as one of France's first serial killers who influenced forensic toxicology. In Brittany, cakes named after her are arsenic-free, and Jean Toulet's 2013 novel Fleur de Tonnerre is based on her. She was a victim of schizophrenia and folklore, symbolizing the struggles of poor servants. This story is a complete picture of her life, a tragic tale of poverty, madness, and death.